Hello and welcome to Healing Trauma Mamas. I'm your host, Madon Wingo. Thank you for joining us as we share in our stories and experiences of healing from childhood traumas and birth traumas. Listen as we discuss our struggles, our failures, our strengths and our victories, and all those lessons we've learned along the way.
I'm Jeanie Bohall, and I live in West Texas near Madon, and our husbands work together. We've been married about almost 16 years now, and I have 3 girls. They are 6, 8, and 10. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and went to school at ACU Online, Abilene Christian, and received my master's in marriage and family therapy. And so now I get to work with kids and families and adults and mostly focus on trauma.
Yeah. So we've talked about this on the podcast numerous times before, but we have a great need for that in our society, and especially, I would say, rural America, that gets kind of pushed to the wayside a lot of times. And I know that's something that you're kind of passionate about in our small town, how there's still a lot of stuff that goes on and people need help. And it's wonderful with, after 2020 hit, so much stuff went online, and now you can get therapy online.
Yes.
And I'm so thankful for that. You do have telehealth now and everything. But there is some aspects of that in-person therapy you just can't beat. Like, there's just this, I can't imagine doing like EMDR therapy through telehealth. Like, my brain doesn't compute how that would even work. But we can talk about that a little more later. But I'd love to maybe, just tell us kind of, I guess, how you got to where you are, and if you don't mind sharing some of your personal experiences. I know you get to deal in your professional life a lot with different types of traumas, ranging from grown, women and men down to young children. But I'd love to hear more about like how you even went in that direction to work with people with trauma, and maybe what your past experiences have been.
Yeah, so I was born in the Seattle area, and my parents were very young, and so I did not get to have a normal birthing process, childhood anyway. They were addicts, and so I was in the CPS system, and then my paternal grandparents adopted me, so that was definitely a blessing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they were done with kids, but I came along and changed that.
Well,
Yes. So, I was raised by them, and then my aunt and uncle also helped a ton, which was really helpful. And so with that, I had a school counselor that was really great, and she would pull us in for groups and different things like self-management and doing stuff within the school. And so with that, I was like, wow, I really want to be a school counselor. And so with watching her and just seeing how much she made an impact on me, that was something that I wanted to do since probably very early on. And so I planned to be a counselor and wanted to do school counseling. And then I moved to Texas. And so Texas requirements for school counseling, you have to teach 2 years. And so I went into school, got my bachelor's in psychology, and then did alt-cert program to teach. And with that teaching, you see a lot of kids, a lot of different backgrounds. It's really great because you get to pour into a lot of kids. So,
I've always thought teachers need to have some type of counseling
Yes.
degree. I don't know how much they train, teachers in those different aspects. But I would think that there's, especially, I just think any age group, like, there's so much that comes along with that they may come and confide in you about all kinds of different situations.
Yeah.
So do they offer that training? Do you know, just for teachers?
So, yeah, they have like a trauma-informed care training. I know, like, a lot of times it's done online and they just watch a video, so it's not in my opinion, not very helpful because it's kind of just click through and get done with this training, which I know teachers are super busy. So
and then you can, say that you're trauma informed. In fact, I was just reading some stuff about that recently and how providers can quote unquote become trauma informed yet have no actual understanding or tools or resources and practice that they have actually working through situations with clients. So I would assume the same thing. It's easy to be done as a teacher. That's difficult though because time constraints. They're super busy. They have so many different trainings they have to go through, I'm sure. So you work with our Children's Advocacy Center?
Yes.
That's great.
And that's a place where kids go when traumatic events happen. Usually it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, any kind of abuse within the home or outside of the home. They come and get interviewed when there's something that's happened. And then they refer to counseling, which would be me.
Okay. All right. That's great. So that's a great way that you're helping our community here in Sweetwater. Can we go back a little bit, please?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about your beginnings because obviously your beginnings started out traumatic. So you were you were born to some addicts. So I'm sure that was major trauma to your body from the very beginning. But then were they involved in your life a lot, even though your grandparents actually adopted you?
No. My biological dad, he's actually still struggling and on the streets. So, yeah. So for him, it was kind of an in and out thing. There were times where he would come over, but my mom, my grandma, she was very careful with when he would and just mindful of his state of mind and being at that time.
Sure.
So depending on that, she would decide if it was okay for me to see him or not, which I was thankful for.
Were they very upfront with you?
Yes. So my grandparents, they tried to get me to call them grandma and grandpa in the beginning, but I was adamant to call them mom and dad, and they were like, we're going to give up on this fight. So she can call us whatever she wants. So yeah, I call them mom and dad, and my grandparents were very helpful with everything, and my aunt and uncle were a huge part and still are in my life, and so I consider them like another set of parents.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome for them to help raise their niece. I'm sure that meant a lot.
Yeah, I was also in and out kind of their house too. 8th grade, I lived with them when they moved to Texas, which is kind of how I got here. And then my senior year of high school, I was with them again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So then throughout your growing up, how old were you when they told you, or was it just always known that they adopted you? Like, do you remember them specifically sitting you down at a certain age, or?
I think I was very young. I know they tried to make it known from when I was asking questions, because I would ask, did I come out of your belly, to my mom, and she finally was like, no, this is what happened, and these are your parents, and she never spoke badly of them. And so with that, it was just kind of something that came out naturally. So if I had questions or anything like that, and so I remember I was, I think, in kindergarten age, and it was right after she really told me, like, Lisa's your mom and Dennis is your dad and that kind of thing. And Lisa had called to talk to me, and I threw the phone. Wow. I was very upset because of just my mind piecing it together. Not anything that my mom had said about it, about Lisa, but it was just like, wow, this is happening, and this is not, how I thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, good for them for just making it just part of your life and just not making it like just a big deal at some point in time that they revealed. But they just tried to. Sounds like they did a really good job raising you. So that's awesome. So a lot of times the girls, especially that have had different things like that when they were growing up, that have difficult teenage years. How were your teenage years?
Well, I did go live with my aunt and uncle a few times.
I was wondering about that.
Yes, 8th grade was tough, and with them moving, that was a big deal for me because I would go to their house on the weekends and they would take me on vacations because my parents were older, so they could do a lot. And I had my cousins that I call my sisters. They're just so close to me, and so that was a big deal. And then senior year of high school, kind of went a little crazy. So
Gotcha.
It's like,
that
I'll
happens.
just go live with my aunt again, and I feel so bad for them. They had to put up with a lot, but I'm here now, so
You stuck it out.
yes.
Well, it happens. You learn and you grow,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So you made it through your senior year. Then you ended up coming to Texas. How soon after?
Well, I was in Texas my senior year, and then I stayed. They actually left.
Gotcha.
Yes. So I met my husband through his cousin in Austin area. He was in the police academy, so
Right, there we
saw
go.
him and thought he was cute, and
Well, you know.
we started talking. And then they were like, "Well, just kidding, we're going back to Washington." They left, and which it worked out great. We moved to Dallas for a year, and then we came to Sweetwater. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. It kind of catches you, doesn't it?
yes.
So then you guys, how long did you wait till you had children?
So actually, we had 4 years together in marriage before we got pregnant. That was a tough thing because my husband was married once before, and they were not sure if they would have kids.
Really?
And so that was always something that was in the back of his mind, like, I don't know if this is even a thing or what's going to happen. And so going into it, we lasted about a year, and then we sought out some help. We went to Lubbock and did some fertility treatments. We did IUIs and took Clomid, all sorts of different tests, and everything seemed okay, but it wasn't like the perfect ideal. Yes, you guys will have kids.
Yeah.
So finally they sat us down and they were like, we don't know if this is going to work. You may have to look into IVF, and that's so expensive. And we were so young and did not have, high paying jobs at the time. So we weren't sure what we were going to do. So then we started looking into adoption, and then went on my walk to Emmaus, and then boom, got pregnant with Michaela 2 weeks after.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Walk to Emmaus is?
Yeah, so it's a weekend. You go, it's kind of like a spiritual thing that you go through and just really tap into your religion and your walk with God. And it's neat. Lots of different people from the community do their talks, and so they do a mix of Bible teaching and talk about their story. And so the table that I was at, they were very focused on praying for us to have a child. And at that point, our marriage was like really rocky, and so I was like, please don't just pray on our marriage. And they were like, no, we feel like we need to pray for a child. And it was a pretty big deal. So
Do you feel like it was rocky because you weren't able to get pregnant, or was that just a
I think it
catalyst for
was
other
part of
things?
it. Yeah, it was part of it, along with other things with work and personal
course.
life and just all of, newly married couple struggles. So, yeah, and really, he was in the police academy when we met. So it was just struggling with him being in school per se, with the academy.
Sure.
And then whenever we moved to Dallas, that's when it really hit. The first day he went on duty, it was like, there was a officer involved shooting and he died. And I was like, oh, you're going to go to work now. Okay.
That is so hard.
Yeah.
So after you guys, you came home from the Walk to Emmaus, and then you got pregnant. How soon was it after?
Like a few weeks.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That's wonderful. So how did that go then?
It was good. The pregnancy was pretty good. I'm trying to remember. My husband's very good at remembering details and dates, so I always have to ask him. But I know I had some water retention, maybe high blood pressure, but nothing too concerning.
Good.
And so I delivered in Abilene, which is about 45 minutes away. And when I did, I lost a lot of blood. And I did get an epidural, but they thought I wasn't sure of when to push, and so they turned it down. And so by the time it was down, I could feel quite a bit of it. And with it being my first baby, I didn't know what to expect and all of the things, and I was worried. And so after she came out, I lost a lot of blood. They almost had to do a blood transfusion, and then I could feel all of the stitching up. It was really bad. And my doctor was like, oh, we want to do a episiotomy. And I'm like, no, please don't. Like that. I don't care if I tear like that. And so luckily, I don't believe he did. They said I tore, but not near as much as I would have with an episiotomy. So there's that. And so she was okay. Her lungs were struggling, but I think my husband was worried the most because he could see everything that was going on, and he felt powerless to do anything.
And I was just listening to something today about that, how we don't discuss, the trauma that the partners go through, especially when we've had maybe a not so traumatic birth, that talking to them about how things appeared to them and from their perspective, it gets overlooked a lot. So yes. I'm sure I've talked to my husband about that too, our first birth, and how things were just, powerless is a good word for that, because it's very difficult. And I know, mamas feel that way sometimes too, just, not in control, didn't get to do the things I wanted, Good for you for voicing up and saying, no, I don't want an episiotomy. So that's good. A lot of times doctors don't ask. So at least your doctor said something to you. I was so
thankful for that.
Yeah, for sure. So you had a little bit of control, so that was good. So did you bounce back? They didn't do the transfusion?
No, they did not. I'm not sure if they gave me anything to help with that. I'm pretty sure they did. I could feel myself going in and out of consciousness too during that time. It was, looking back when my husband was telling me all of that, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize all of that was happening. But after that, my oldest, she had a little jaundice, but other than that, she was good.
Yeah. That's great. Good. Awesome. Yeah. Did you have to go to the NICU at all, or did they have you just watch for the jaundice?
Yeah, they just watched.
Did you have to do under Billy lights at all or anything like that?
They just told me to put her in sunlight.
Sure, perfect.
And,
that's
and
great.
I did, and it took a long time, but she was, and she had trouble nursing in the beginning, so that was kind of a big deal for me because I was very set on breastfeeding, and so a week goes by, and they're like, oh, I had a nurse come out that specialized in helping with that lactation.
An IBCLC?
I think so, yes. And she was so helpful. She was so patient and came out and was like, it's okay, just be calm, and all that. And it was a good experience to have her come out. And so after that, my supply shot up, and she ate a lot.
Yay. And that will help clear the jaundice too, because eating more input causes more output and flushes everything out. Yes. So that's what helps with jaundice. But, so she did fine after that, and everything was just pretty good. You did well the first year?
Yes, I think so.
Good.
Yeah, my husband helped out a lot, which was really helpful.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So between that and the next baby, did everything go pretty well for you guys?
So we got pregnant about year and a half to 2 years later. We had our next one, and so when we got pregnant,
so no more trouble getting pregnant.
No, quickly, nursed for a year, and then a few months later, boom, got pregnant again. So that was nice, a nice surprise.
God fixed that one.
Yes. Yes. So we had Savannah, and when she was born, everything was wonderful. The epidural was great. The birth was great. I couldn't feel anything, which was great. And when she came out, they kind of turned, which I don't know if this is normal or not, but they kind of turned her to the side. And so I couldn't see her face. And so it was very quiet in the room. And I got really worried. And I was like, what is going on? And nobody said anything. And it was my husband, his mom, and his aunt in the room. And my mother-in-law is an OB nurse, and so she kind of whispered to the doctor she doesn't know. And I didn't hear that, but that's what she had said. And so the doctor kind of came to me, and she said, oh, did anybody tell you that your daughter has cleft lip? And I said, no. And that was the first time, really since grade school, I had heard about it, because there was a boy that had a surgery, and it was very early on that I'd seen that. And so that's the extent that I knew.
Had you had any ultrasounds?
So I did. So going back, we pulled one, and you can see the two lines but nobody said anything.
Nobody said anything. Wow.
Now that we know what to look for, it was a great picture, and they did it at that hospital, and we were like, man, I wish the ultrasound tech would have said, hey,
did you take it back to me like, look, you need some training?
No. I should have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she was getting weighed, and I could see her face, and I was very worried because it looked very swollen, and I didn't know kind of what the status was on that. And so when she would eat and I'd try to nurse her, it would just go right back into her nose, and she would breathe it in. While the nurses would just come in and suction it out and then leave. And I was like, she's turning purple, like she's not eating, and you're just okay. And then they sent us home the next day. No NICU, no referral, nothing. I was very upset, and so was my husband.
Yeah, because for one, you weren't prepared for this. So you hadn't done any research. You didn't know what to do. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and they only had one bottle. I can't even remember what it's called, but only one type of nipple and bottle for her, and it didn't work, obviously, because she was still like getting it into her lungs.
So they didn't give you any type of plan or anything of what to do?
No, so I was
scary.
panicked. Yes. And so luckily, my husband's aunt, she lives in Dallas, and she's very much like researcher. She's like, I will help you guys, whatever you need. So she was already researching when she had left, like different doctors and specialists. Yeah, so we went to Children's, and they have a fantastic surgeon there. So we called.
I'm so surprised they didn't transfer you over there.
I am too.
Yeah.
Well, and when we called,
they were probably surprised too.
Oh, they were like, you've done all your prenatals here? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, you're behind. Like, we got to get you in. And so Halloween, where we're on our way to, and she was born on the 20th, rushing her over there so they could look her over and take pictures and see the status. And they have an appliance called a NAM, and it's like a denture without teeth is how I explain it. And luckily for her, it was just her lip and partial palate, so just that gum line was what was separated. But hers was very severe, and so they wanted to get it started, but insurance didn't cover it. So again, we weren't prepared. But we were like, anything we need to do, we will do. So we did that, and then that meant every week going to Dallas, driving a few hours to get it adjusted and the nose piece adjusted, and that in itself was a lot, especially for me and my husband.
And that's like a 3.5, 4 hour drive with a newborn.
Yes, so she got used to being in the
one
car.
way.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Wow, poor thing.
Yeah.
So
it was nice though. After she had the appliance put in, it kind of blocked that gap, and so she was finally able to drink out of a bottle. But even them, with all their different types, it took 3 or 4 before she could actually hold it down. So,
Wow. Were you able to, I know a lot of times when people are faced with situations like that, they just go into a mode where they're just focused on just getting your daughter taken care of and getting her fixed. Was there ever a point where you finally like stopped and let everything kind of catch up with you and realize,
Yeah. I think that was pretty early on, because in the hospital I was still kind of in shock with everything and surprised that they just let us go home with no plan. And after we got home, and I was like, I don't feel like I'm doing this right. Like, she's not eating, she's turning purple. The nurses just came in real quick and zip, they were done. Why can't I do that? I want to nurse her, and so I was trying to pump and feed, and then she wasn't getting enough anyway. So yeah, there was a lot of self-doubt in myself, and also I felt very guilty because I didn't know why she had cleft. I thought maybe it was something I did, or things like that. But luckily, when we went to the surgeon and we met with him just about her, he was like, no, sometimes this just happens. Yeah. And it could run in the family. It does not run in ours, so either one of ours. So it just so happened to happen that way.
Wow. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
I'm sure most mamas would go back and look at everything. Is there something I did? Is there anything? And then get in that research mode and start looking up everything you could possibly
why this
find.
Could happen.
Yes. Oh, Google is not our friend when it comes to those moments.
No, don't do that for anything.
You get down lots of rabbit holes for sure. So you got her taken care of. And everything's all good now. Does she still have to go to the doctor?
Yeah, so she had her first surgery, I think she was 3 months old, 2 to 3 months old, which that was super scary, but it was wonderful experience over there. And so after that, they met with her once a year. She has her own team, And it's really great because part of the team, they have a psychologist on there. And so she's always checking in. How is she doing? Okay. How is her feelings? Yeah, does she feel like different or different things like that? And so she gave us some tips of like, make sure to have lots of pictures from before the surgery and after the surgery and talk with her about it and be open. And I feel like there's times where she's noticing, because she's 8 now, like, oh, I'm different. I have this scar. But she knows it's okay. Like, it's not something that's, you know, going to really set her apart from everybody else. And she's special. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's great.
So, yeah, she'll have one more surgery. We just found out recently, probably next year, she'll have a bone marrow transplant. And then they'll, do like a whole reconstruction of her gum line. Yeah, because there's still a gap. Is it
because of her age as she gets older and it gets wider and bigger? Or,
you know, I don't know, because possibly. I know when we had her yearly appointment 2 years ago, which they separated yearly, it began to be 2 years apart. But they said, no, she's good. She looks good. We'll wait. And then this last time, the ortho was like, yeah, we need to really look into this some more. So, the dentist we use in Abilene caught it earlier because she has an extra tooth coming in. And so the surgeon said, don't pull any teeth because any bone that we get, we want to keep. And so I was like, okay.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, it was really tricky. And so we just went to Dallas, and he was like, well, yeah, she's probably going to need that. And I've heard it's so painful, especially the bone marrow from her hip. Yeah, the extraction of that. And so I'm just... Luckily, she doesn't know. She's only worried because she has to get a tooth pulled because, one's about to fall out, and that's all she heard.
Might as well not cause her any extra ahead of time about it, for sure. Wow. No, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd change your life.
Yes, and then after that, just braces, and then maybe a nose reconstruction when she's about 17, 18, because your nose grows when you get older. So, and that's about the time they said that they'll look at it and see what she wants to do.
Yeah.
Which I think she will, because she's already noticed some things about it. Yeah. But I just say she's beautiful.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and she gets to be very unique.
Yes.
So that's kind of nice. Not like any other of the girls out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. There's a play up on that for sure. Yeah. Well, so, and then you got to have little Miss Jeanie.
Yes. She's my wild child.
We all have one of those.
Yes. I thought my oldest was, but Jeanie came and...
You were wrong.
Yes. Surprised us all. So, yeah, about 2 years later again, had Jeanie. With her, it was tough with her birth. She came pretty fast, and so I did choose to get an epidural. My epidural did not work, and so I was really adamant, like, this is going to work. And he came back in to try to, like, hurry it up and, like, oh, we need to get more medicine. And my husband just looks at me and says, you need to realize you will have her without any pain meds. And I was like, no, it's going to work. And I was in denial for the whole time. And then I was like, oh, no, it's happening. So, I was only numb to my knees. And so I had her pretty much natural. I could feel everything. And so now looking at it, I definitely do not ever want an epidural again. Yeah. If I ever had one, if God blessed us with one more, I do not want it again, because it was a big hassle, because after she was born, we found out she was about 2 to 3 weeks early, and we didn't know that. And so her lungs were not ready. She was breathing very deeply, and we were very scared. And so they rushed her to the NICU. And so at that point, my epidural kicked in, and I could not move. And and so I couldn't
follow
see
her to the NICU.
No, my husband did, and so he was able to hold her, and they washed her hair, and all that up there. And about that same time, there was twins that came in that were like high risk, and so they locked down the NICU, and I didn't hear anything for 48 hours. Not one thing. Not an update, nothing. And I was panicked for sure.
Wow. That's crazy. So the nurses didn't give you an update?
No.
They didn't...
Nothing.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I'd be scared out of my mind.
Yes. So at that point,
I would be playing all the things through my head. Oh, so they'd happen and they're not coming to tell me about it.
Exactly.
Or, that would be awful.
All we knew is she was up there, and then we didn't even know there was twins that locked it down.
Yeah.
We just knew she was up there and it's locked down. So, I think it was the next day was when they were like, oh, it's because there's twins. Well, thanks for that one piece of information.
Yeah, for sure.
now that we're panicked. So they let me stay in the hospital, I think an extra day.
Good.
And then my husband brought our trailer up so we could stay close by. And so that was a big moment, is walking out with all of my things without my baby. And so even just flashing back to when I was born, nobody was there for a month and I was by myself, and I was like, this is not what I wanted to happen.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so where did you park the trailer? In the parking lot?
Yes. Oh, yes. In the parking lot. And I went up there every 2 hours,
Absolutely.
like clockwork. And so I think it was after day 2, I want to say, the nurses, they were so sweet. They were like, you really need to get rest. Because I was not resting at all. I was panicked, and I was like, this should be my job. I should be the one feeding my baby and waking up with her and all of these things. And I can't be right there with her, and she has to be in the incubator and all these things. And they said, you really just get some rest. It's okay. And so I went back to the trailer and slept really hard for about 6 to 7 hours.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
So then so how long did she end up staying?
She stayed, I believe, and this is where my husband would remember exact days.
I hear you.
Yes. I think she's there a week. They were wanting to hold her longer, but luckily her jaundice went away and her breathing was well, and she was able to eat, which was great. And so then they let her go home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good. And so when she got home, everything was fine?
Yeah, everything was pretty good. They had to check her out some whenever she came home. We took her to the doctor in town, and then everything was okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I was very glad.
Wow. So then how was it being a mom of 3?
It was a lot.
Yeah.
My husband had to help a lot. Especially with Savannah and her cleft. It was hard going back and forth, and then Jeanie was born, and she was still having to go back, and luckily not as much, and her surgery was done. But it was hard juggling everything. And then I felt like all of the focus was on Savannah, and then all of the focus was on Jeanie, and so I was worried that Michaela would be left out or Savannah would be left out because Jeanie was born, and it's hard for mom to keep her time
Of
full.
course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then rest at some point.
Yes.
And then there's a husband in there.
Yes, and work.
Yes, all of it. Goodness gracious. Yeah, so you were continuing to work through all of this?
Yes.
Wow.
6 weeks after they were born, I went back for all 3 of them, and I'm very sad because I wish I would have been able to stay home. And now looking back, my husband is like, man, I wish we could have made it work, or, just did it anyway, because it's really important in those first few years.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, but sometimes you're just in the moment, and you do what you think is best at that time. Yeah, for sure. So how have things been since then?
Really good. I know just watching my own daughters, I've noticed like some anxiety flare-ups in them, or mostly my older 2. My oldest has ADHD, we found out. So getting that situated. And it was tricky with her, and I feel like this is a lot of kids, because sometimes, ADHD and anxiety go hand in hand. So you don't ever really know, is it the anxiety that's flaring up, or is it the ADHD? And so when she was very young, she would get in trouble a lot at school because she was very, scattered and hard to pay attention and stay in one spot. And so we chose to try her on some medication, and that did not go well. I was very against getting medication for her, for sure. And especially, over the, through the doctor, and because we tried every natural thing and it just wouldn't work. But it made her very angry, the come down of the medicine. And I was like, we can handle her little hiccups here and there, but I don't want to do this all the time, and it's messing with her body, so we're not going to do this. So a few years roll by. She's still having some of those issues. Her teachers are saying, it's really hard for her to stay focused. And I'm like, well, maybe it's her anxiety. Because I know with me, if I'm anxious, I am going to have a hard time paying attention to what anybody says.
Yep, for sure.
Yes, so they put her on Lexapro, very, very small dose, 5 milligrams. And that just takes the edge off just enough, and perked her up, and she's good. That's so great. I notice when she's not on it, and she's okay with taking it now. She's very embarrassed, private about her life, but yeah, but she notices when she needs it as well.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so they're growing. sweet little girls that you have growing. So how do you think...
Hello, Healing Trauma Mamas listeners. I wanted to pause the podcast just for a moment to let you know about the platform that I've been using to create this podcast, Anchor by Spotify. Anchor has been so easy for me to use. As you all know, I've said many times that I'm a very unlikely podcast host. In fact, I never thought I'd be on a podcast, let alone hosting one myself. But when my daughter showed me Anchor last spring, I realized how easy it was for me to be able to create content and upload it to many different platforms using Anchor. I'm so thankful I got started, and I'm extremely thankful it's completely free. So I think that every single person has something valuable to share with the world. You listening right now have something valuable to share. And all you have to do is download the Anchor app and start your own podcast today. Let me know when you do, and I look forward to listening to it. Okay, back to the podcast.
Your job, first of all, but also your life growing up. Obviously, you had a lot of things going on. How do you think that has affected your parenting?
So, I am very open with all three of them. My mother-in-law laughs because she's like, man, they already know everything already. They're just so knowledgeable about all the things. And I'm like, yes, because that's how my mom was with me. She wanted to tell me all of it. And I wanted them to make sure that they could come to me if they had any questions, because a lot of times kids, when they get older, they start asking friends or hear people talking about different things, and then they either look it up themselves or find out through other people, and I did not want that.
You don't want them to find out.
Yes,
for
yes.
Sure.
So I make sure they know that ask mom or dad. Usually they come to me because it's easier. And so that definitely has come into play with them. Also, when I worked at CPS, so that was before teaching, graduated from Hardin-Simmons with my psychology degree. And so I was like, I'm going to go do CPS, because that's kind of, I don't know if I felt like I was paying it back because I was through the system some or what, but it was near and dear to my heart. So I'm like, I want to do this. Well, the training for that is pretty intense.
Is it?
Yeah. And so you just see and hear a lot of things. And so with that, there was a video we had to watch that included a child that was about the same age as my oldest. And so that was before I was pregnant, but I just started bawling. And I noticed I am the only one crying in here. Nobody else cried. And they were a lot younger than I was, but I was like, what is happening? But it was because of the video and the tie. And that's also what I've noticed with even my husband working at the schools. Like, anytime anything's involved with kids that are our own age, it's very triggering for us. And we are way on hyper alert, noticing all the things.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah. Because you're just, of course, as a parent, you're automatically thinking, what if that was my kid? Yeah. And how would I handle that?
Yes.
And I'm just like, people would be dead.
Yes.
That's all I can say.
Yes.
But I mean, it's really, really difficult. And you have to hear, just like our husbands, they see the worst in a lot of people, and you get to hear and see a lot of things that, most people have no clue about and would never hear it. How do you compartmentalize that?
Well, with my childhood, I have learned to dissociate some.
Yeah.
So check out. Sometimes
in a good
that's
way
good.
Or a bad way?
Well, I say sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. A lot of times my husband will be like, where did you go? I don't know what's happening right now. But he just keeps talking now because he knows I'll just come back. But so with that, hearing stories all day from different kids and families, and then his stuff, and it's really hard. So I really try hard to process it when I can, because if I shove it down, it's going to come up some way or another. And it's usually, I tell people this all the time, in the way you don't want it to, or at the time you don't want it to, because you're overloaded or stressed. That'll trigger more.
Yeah. So you try your best not to bring it home with you, and try to just like let it go at that point in time, so you don't hold on to it and it come out later. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm able to do that. Other times it's helpful because my husband knows a lot of what's going on, and so we process together, and that has been really helpful. So finding somebody to do that with, Or even I went to my own counselor and just said,
Good.
man, this was a tough week, you know, things like that. And that's been helpful, just to talk it through with somebody that understands.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stigma about that. The counselor needs a counselor, right? We joke sometimes that the midwife needs a midwife. 'Cause I had a friend a while back who's a midwife, and she called me up and just I said, thank you. I needed a midwife in that moment. I appreciate it. Yeah, but yeah, the same thing with you. You know, you need somebody to talk to. You need somebody to be able to share and kind of let some things go sometimes. And a lot of people don't have what you get to have with your husband, and where you both might actually both be involved in the same situation, and so you both know what's going on with it, and you're able to kind of just unload with each other and kind of walk through it and discuss, and you're both probably dealing with a lot of the same emotions, especially like you said, if it's with a child that's similar to one of your girls is age. And it's hard because every child you think about like, oh, that could be my kid, you know, and that makes it really difficult to be able to process, I'm sure. So can you give us any type of techniques for any of our listeners out there that might deal in a job where they have to maybe hear or see some hard things? I mean, I know just if we talk about in the healthcare industry, I know people are going to see all kinds of things, but we were talking earlier about just working in a school, right? And how many different things. In fact, your husband is the SRO at our middle school, and you're working in the school too, and the different things that you get involved with just being in a school setting, because there are children there, and there's so many other careers where you are involved with children. You know, what's some maybe techniques or some ways that those providers can work through that?
I would say try to catch it early on if you can. I know sometimes it pops up later on, and you may think, oh, this isn't going to bother me, you know. But it might creep up later. So even your spouse might notice it, you know, a different mood change or anything like that within yourself. And so just don't be afraid to find somebody either you can confide in, or do some research and find a provider, a therapist that is able to specialize in trauma or things like that. And so you won't shock them.
Yeah.
That's what I tell all my kids. You're not going to surprise me. It's okay to share. And so crazy enough, I feel like that's why a lot of them like to go talk to my husband, because he is a quote unquote cop and has seen a lot of things, because a lot of times people that have went through traumatic events or seen things like that, they don't want to share it because they don't want to shock the other person. So having somebody that specializes in that is very helpful.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. Find some resources in your area to be able to go to. Are there any ways that I know that we've talked before about different type of techniques to work through trauma. So say any of our listeners may have had some trauma themselves, and maybe they're waiting to get to see a counselor, or that's just not something they're able to do at this time. Is there anything that they can do to try to help work through and do some processing on their own?
So one of the things that I usually mention first would be, it's very cliche, but journaling.
Sure.
It's very good to go back if you have something pop up and you're like, oh, I don't know what's going on, then just walk it through before, during, and after to try to see kind of what the trigger was. And then if you really want to get in depth, just start doing a timeline, because a lot of times there's things that we may not have thought, oh, this didn't affect me, but it really did because it's popping up now. And so those are two things that I would suggest. And then depending on whatever the symptoms are, anxiety or dissociating or whatever it is, there's definitely good grounding techniques. You can research that. It's just basically deep breathing, noticing things in the room to keep you grounded, like in the moment, because sometimes we get lost in our thoughts and we ruminate on our thoughts, and that's not always good when we have, kids and home and you want to be present. Yes. And also your brain is going to naturally do that. And so if it does, plan a time, 30-minute block in the evening. Okay, I'm going to have my journal time or my coffee time or whatever, and mom's going to be gone for a little bit, and just meditate. Pull up a YouTube video, different things like that. whatever works.
I think a lot of times that journaling, especially like when we're younger, like that might be something we naturally do, or even, is encouraged through school, keep a diary, keep a journal, write lots of things. And then we kind of get out of that. Most of us do as we get older. But I've learned that myself, trying to get back into that. It's really good. I mean, just jotting down your thoughts can be helpful sometimes, and you might surprise yourself sometimes, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Another thing you mentioned I was thinking about is that you talked about listening to what's going on with your body. I think that's something that in our society especially we've gotten really far away from. Being able to recognize stuff that's happening in our own body, where I think we've gotten so used to, especially let's just talk about moms in general, right? How much do we suppress how we're really feeling, or the things going on, or I got a pain in my knee, but I'm not going to do anything about it because my kid needs braces, or because of this, right? And there's so often we just push ourselves aside and we don't address the situation, or we think we can deal with it later. And we don't even learn how to recognize that things are building up, like say anxiety, like we talked about, recognizing that something is starting within us, that anxiety is happening, that this could be from a trauma response from something, which trauma, there's something I heard today that I really thought was a neat thought to thank you, Caitlin Fusco, I heard on your podcast, just talking about how trauma is not just an emotion, it's a physical response. So we talk about, having a trauma response, and people are like, oh, okay, they started crying about something or whatever, but no, it's a whole body response, and not just, an emotional component. How do we get to being able to recognize that and see what's going on in ourselves?
So really, again, journaling, trying to figure out what's happening before, sitting down, okay, what does anxiety feel like? What am I doing? Where is it in my body? How long does it last? All those are very important things. Also, if your spouse notices something, or your partner, that's probably going to help you a lot, because they could be like, hey, you're kind of on edge, when really they're not saying, hey, quit being rude or whatever. It's, hey, I notice. Yes. I notice that you're different, something's going on. And so
jot it down.
Or say, hey, what do you see in me? How am I acting? Because a lot of times it can come out in anger.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've seen that anxiety on children, come out as anger.
Yes.
I have a child that does that often, and then I'll be like, whoa, you're overstimulated right now. I can tell, and you don't like that you have social anxiety, and I can tell that it's coming out that way. But adults have that. That happens often, and what might even come out as rage is really more anxiety or depression, and not what we consider like just emotional rage.
Right.
There's something else involved with it.
Yeah, and I think you were right too. Like with anxiety, they may think, oh, we're just worried all the time, or depression, you're crying all the time. Like it doesn't look the same for everybody. So just noticing within yourself, and then not always just going to Google to look it up, but going to your doctor, and going to a therapist that specializes in it can really give you a full picture and find out exactly what is going on, because it could be something completely different. It could be like a mood thing. It could be hormonal.
Sure.
That's something to always check out too.
Sure. So I know I was thinking about resources, which we can definitely link some resources for anyone thinking, so you don't have to Google, and you can go to some actual resources. Locally, what if we have any local listeners in the Sweetwater, Abilene area? Is there some good resources around here that you'd recommend?
Yeah. So I actually help with the Nolan County Renewal Project.
Yes,
I'm an executive director. So we have 3 counselors, one including myself now, that helps go around and connects with different organizations here. And I know the hospital has a counselor there, and there's one private practice also in town. Other than that, it's going to be Abilene.
Yeah.
It will be our closest. Or you can do telehealth.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a great thing that we have now. It's wonderful. So if somebody was able to do telehealth, is there a specific website or somewhere that they could go to?
So I know BetterHelp.com is one. I'm actually signed up through there. I have not seen anybody yet, but they really like fine-tooth comb
Sure.
who they sign up to be a provider on there. And they make sure that they're, in your state licensed, so that way it's a right match and that they specialize with what you need. And
That's great.
that, I'm not getting paid by them at all, but I feel like that's a good website
Sure.
to go to.
And one that came up to my mind while we were just now, you were talking about it. If any mamas are postpartum, there's also Postpartum Support International that you can go to, and they may not exactly have a list of, say, counselors or therapists in your area, but they have people that they can target from your area, knowing where you are, you know, your town or whatever. And they have people who are volunteer and are trained in that area to know where all the resources are for you. So they can give you a person in your area that is trained to know where all the resources are.
That's good.
Yeah, and you can reach them 24/7. So any mamas out there who are dealing with any postpartum depression, anxiety, rage, like we talked about, anything like that, or even that, your birth, you're feeling traumatic, that it was a traumatic event, or sometimes we don't recognize that we're having a traumatic response or some type of trauma response, and maybe you just start recognize that, every time somebody mentions birth or I start to try to talk about it, I can't talk about it, or I fidget, or I have to talk really fast through it really quick, or I have to justify it real quick, and we're not allowed to just be in the space. Responses like that means there's an issue, and you need to be able to discuss it with somebody. So reach out. You can always reach out to your provider first, talk to them, whether it's your OBGYN, family practice doctor, or your midwife. Reach out to them for sure. Again, just like Jeanie said, you're not going to tell them something they haven't heard before. You're not going to shock them. They're not going to be so surprised that some mom is dealing with some depression or anxiety. It happens, and they should be trained in that. And if you feel like they don't respond in a manner that you would have liked or given you resources, reach out to someone else. Absolutely. So if you don't see somebody local, then go to Postpartum Support International. Go to Better Health. Find somebody. What you don't need to do is just sit there in it. You need to find somebody you can talk to about it, for sure.
Yeah, that also goes for therapists too. There's a lot of times where people will, research and think, this is the right one, and then they go and they meet, and it's not at all what they thought it was going to be. I've done it myself. I've met with a few, and I'm like, this is not who I feel like I need to be with. So I was afraid to just stop going because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, or I was like, well, this should work. But don't feel afraid. If it doesn't work out, it's okay. You can find somebody else.
For sure. Yeah. There's no reason to be like, hey, you know what? This isn't quite. You have to feel comfortable with your therapist, your counselor. You have to be able to open up to them and make a connection with them. And some people may find that difficult over telehealth, and you need to find somebody in person. Others may find that works better for them, and that it's not too, I guess, intimate. Some people don't want that intimacy. They need to be able to be open to them, but not be too close with them. So finding what works for you is what you need to do. But you need to reach out. You need to try to find somebody to talk to.
Especially since COVID. That really was a game changer, because a lot of times, before COVID, there was telehealth, but it wasn't near the extent that it is now. And so it's really helped grow resources, especially for people that are working, that can't always get off of work to go to a meeting and take all that extra time. They could just find somebody and schedule it in the evening, or take a lunch break and do a session. So that helps with that as well.
Yeah, and because of the telehealth too, you can do in different time zones. So you can even work it out where normally would not be a time frame that you could get anything done, but you could maybe, I know that there is a resource for perinatal resources in Colorado. Well, that's a different time zone for us, and so if there's any moms in our area, they would be able to find a time frame that maybe after the children have gone to bed that they could be able to talk, and that would work well for their schedule. The important thing is recognizing that there's an issue, and that even if you think I might need to talk to somebody, then you should go ahead. Yeah, it can't hurt.
You can try it, and if you don't like it, wait, or try somebody new.
Sure.
Or keep going.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of see what comes up. I mean, most all of us, just if we get into adulthood and have children at all, then we've experienced some type of trauma and something that we need to work through. And if anything, they can at least give you good resources to be able to work through things in the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any last bit of advice that you'd like to give our listeners that is dealing with any type of a trauma, or really, I mean, what we talk often, and that's what we were just now talking about, is finding somebody to help you heal through it. I mean, we really want to focus on that part, not staying in it and not just trying to push through it, but actually working through it, healing through it, and getting on the other side. Any words of wisdom that you would like to pass on?
Actually, there's a new number now for suicide awareness, or people that are struggling with those thoughts. And so they actually have just people there available either to call or text to this number. And it's 988 now. It's the national number. So anywhere that you're at, if you're struggling with depression or whatever it is, I believe they also help you find somebody that's near you. Good. So that's a good resource for yourself or for somebody else that you're noticing, hey, you are seeming a little different. I'm noticing. Notice things. People don't think it's so attacking if we say, hey, you're different. You know, that sounds different than I'm noticing that you're, sitting a lot more by yourself. Yeah. Like so, and people like to be noticed, For
sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So 988.
Yes.
Anywhere from any phone in the United States,
yes.
for sure.
Yes.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
okay.
I was excited to hear about that. That's
I didn't know
new.
about that. That's wonderful. Okay, yeah, we'll make sure and put that on our resources page just to make sure. Also, but yeah, if you are struggling at all and having any type of thoughts where it can't wait to see, call right now.
For sure.
So you could talk to somebody.
Yeah, especially if there's a crisis going on and they are, really acting a lot like, man, they might try to do something. It's okay to ask
Can
them
you call
directly.
For somebody else?
I would think so. If they're with you,
sure.
Or text, say, hey, my friend. A lot of times people say that about themselves. My friend's having these issues.
Right,
so I'm sure they're trained to work through those as well.
So you can text the number also?
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of different people who don't really want to pick up the phone and make a phone call, but they would text somebody.
Yeah. For sure.
So that's great. So anyone out there listening who is struggling at all, please reach out. There are resources. There are people that are here to help you and share with you and sit with you and meet you wherever you are today. So.
Thank you for listening. May you be encouraged and strengthened by what you've heard today. Remember, you are dearly loved by your Creator. So be who He created you to be. May you go in peace, friends. Till next time, Shalom.